Part 84. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Xueshi. Chapter 839. If it is said that the Dharma of freedom is completed, it is a question. In the process of solving this problem, Yilin increasingly discovered that this was an unsolvable question. Circles represent cycles. Fang represents rules. How to combine square and circle? It's like the cold platter and spicy hot pot in cooking. If you eat them separately, you can feel the pleasure of ice and fire. But if you pour them together, the cold dishes are not cold dishes. The hot pot has no temperature, is neither fish nor fowl, and tasteless. The two power systems that Yilin is most proficient in seem to have a lot in common, but among them, their core theories are essentially different. Forcibly merging two different systems is already difficult, not to mention the fact that Yilin now has supreme style spells and chi refining techniques in his knowledge repository. Yilin had a feeling. He is like facing ingredients with colorful colors and conflicting flavors. If he makes several dishes, he can make a joyous funeral banquet. But if he wants to make these ingredients into one dish, then it seemed a little beyond his comprehension. Yilin spent an hour and a half. Wasting time. No progress. In fact, Yilin also realized that she had reached a critical step. It's not that he doesn't understand these two kinds of knowledge deeply enough. Rather, he was missing something. A key module that can integrate the two and even more knowledge together. Am I going to find the answer here? Yilin waved her hand and dispersed the invisible barrier. Before the two masters returned, Yilin quietly slipped into the two masters' library. Actually, Yilin wanted to go to Wanjuan Mountain more. I heard there are many books in it. Yilin doesn't have storage equipment now. Since it can't be moved, she can just put it in her head. It's not a big problem. But he can't get in. Wanjuan Mountain is one of the forbidden areas. If the level is not high enough, entry is not allowed. If you really want to climb the ranks in Tianjian sect honestly, you have to wait until the year of the monkey. It is said that there are terrorist restrictions around Wanjuan Mountain, and Yilin cannot risk his life to try out the formation rashly. Yilin sighed, and he casually took down a sword formation book from the bookshelf. In fact, he had forced himself to memorize the contents of this book. Turning through the yellowed pages was just to give Yilin a sense of ritual in reading. It took another half an hour. Yilin yawned. Suddenly, Yilin's hand was still in front of her mouth while the ancient book in her hand fell to the floor with a clatter. Yilin was stunned. After being stunned for a while, Yilin stood up and walked outside the library. Then he identified the gap in the restriction, activated shadow killing, avoided the key point of the restriction, and slipped in. In a blink of an eye, Yilin came out again. After a while, Yilin went in again. After going in and out several times, Yilin couldn't laugh or cry. She hit her head hard and began to scold herself, I used to be very smart. Why is it that after reviving my life, my brain is no longer working? I can't find the key in the locked place, that's it? Even if I don't have the key, wouldn't it be the same if I go find a locksmith and learn how to open a lock? Yilin got enlightened. At night. The sky is full of stars, spreading a layer of luxurious light in the garden. The purple petals all over the courtyard shine like crystal clear gems under the moon. Wuxin flowers last for hundreds of years and are easy to take care of. But the price is that this flower has a strong plastic feel and looks a little less lively, more like a handicraft. Yilin spent a little time, and after eating and drinking, she took care of the courtyard again, using flower petals to lay out the spirit-gathering array style, waiting for the return of the two masters. Really? When the moon is above the stars. The two old men took the same steps, regardless of the front or rear, and fell on the auspicious clouds. The ram is black and the ram is white. Sure enough, they went out in style, and when they came back, they smelled faintly of wine. The two of them had red faces, Their eyes met, and they seemed to be communicating intensely. The two of them have the same mind. Even if they don't speak, they can still know what the other is thinking. They are almost the same as one person, sharing the same mind and heart. Master, you are back. The obedient young man, as usual, brought the two gentlemen warm water to wash their faces. Gong Yang He and Gong Yang Bai were extremely satisfied with this new registered disciple. That person really made the right recommendation. It's a pity that the qualifications are inferior and the appearance is a little less festive. Separately in two copper basins, while the two red-faced old men were washing themselves with rhythmic movements, they were actually thinking about what kind of magic elixir they could use to improve the cultivation qualifications of the named disciples because of their favorable impression of Yilin. Yilin stood aside, silent. Gong Yang's black gaze swept over and looked at Yilin for a moment. The two quickly entered into a dialogue mode where their hearts were connected and they became one. Gong Yang Bai, Lin Yi. Gong Yang He, 5th level of receiving Qi. Gong Yang Bai, the progress is slow. Hey, this qualification is not as good as the ownerless wild crane in the crane forest. Bai, what a pity for this innate understanding. Hey, I am jealous of the genius. Bai, but my teacher has seen it. Hey, you haven't fallen behind in your practice. Bai, I feel relieved for the teachers. Hey, don't be addicted to side magic. Together, monks, only those who have cultivated the supreme road and will live forever will be on the right path. The two masters could tell at a glance that Yilin had used flower petals to set up the simplest version of the spirit gathering array in the yard. This is not a profound formation. There was such a thing in the books they threw to Yilin to study. The spirit gathering array was laid out in a decent manner, and they were actually quite satisfied with Yilin's understanding. Like last time, Yilin used flower petals to spread out the wuxan sword formation, which also shocked them. They had never seen such a registered disciple of Meng Lang. But this disciple cannot improve his own strength, which makes Gong Yang He and Gong Yang Baiting have toothaches. If you continue like this, it will be difficult for us to recruit you with dignity and dignity. The black and white sheep seemed to have drunk too much. In his words, Yilin's cultivation qualifications were dismissed as worthless. Indeed, the ownerless wild cranes kept in captivity in the crane forest have been raised for 2 or 3 years, absorbing the essence of the sun and the moon, and absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The wild cranes that have not yet opened their spiritual orifices and IQ are equivalent to the 6th level of absorbing energy, and they can carry people and fly. Why can't this named disciple fly? Yilin silently endured the contempt of the black and white sheep. After the two of them washed up, he obediently poured the water in the copper basin. When the two were about to go back to their room to sleep, Yilin expressed her thoughts. Two masters, I want to learn formation techniques. The two sheep were stunned and looked at each other, speechless and choked. When Yilin made her request, the second elder Gong Yang didn't talk to Yilin for a few days and seemed to be angry. Yilin thought about it, and sure enough, he had already guessed that it wouldn't be that easy. Although Tianjian sect is from the same family, each elder is responsible for bringing in new members, and although it seems harmonious, there is still competition within the sect. Disciple is the master's card, even if Yilin is just a registered one, it is still a small card. Just like the cards in Wangxiang Tower, whether they are ugly or not, whether they are beautiful or not, the shopkeeper doesn't know, but the people who come in don't know. And each elder is good at something slightly different. The elders who teach the skills, they master most of the cultivation techniques in Tianjian section in terms of practice. Apart from the master, they are the only ones, so the two of them are responsible for teaching the skills. As for formation skills, the one who is best at it is Fangyuan Mountain's formation elder, Ren Qingshan. Most of the big bands and big sword arrays in the sect that can be named were written by him. Legend has it that the Tianjian sect's most terrifying sword formation, the 9 heavens and 10 earths demon-slaying great sword formation, is inspected and repaired every 100 years. He once participated in and led the maintenance work of the sword formation. In addition, there are elders who specialize in alchemy, kimen, hexagrams, animal training, etc. They are like the subject leaders of different majors in a university. The student under the disciple wanted to run away from someone else's arms and Jiaoyi was tactful, so the black and white sheep were naturally very angry. Yulin thought for a moment and understood the reason why the two sheep were angry. In this way, they did not speak for several days, and they were extremely stubborn. On this day, while Black and White Air Yang was carrying 2 more bottles of wine and went out to collect news, Yulin secretly stole 2 bottles of old Zizu brewing from their wine cellar, followed the road all the way down the mountain, and returned to the service room. Forward. After all, he had stayed here for half a year, and when he revisited his old place, those wooden huts that looked like toilets were quite pleasing to the eye and a little more friendly. Not far from the wooden house, Uncle Chenbei was sweating and chopping firewood on a tree stump. This work of chopping firewood also requires skill. The handle of the axe is also specially made of golden tripod shenyuan wood, it is extremely heavy. Only by keeping your breath running at all times can you swing freely. Seeing Yulin walking towards her with steps that she didn't recognize, a smile appeared on Chenbei's withered face. "Hey, Xiaolin, how come you have time to come here today?" Uncle Chenbei stopped what he was doing and wiped the sweat from his forehead, his face rosy. "Huh? Your cough seems to have improved a lot, would you like some?" "I have wine." Yulin shook 2 unopened pieces of purple bamboo in her hand. "Purple bamboo brew." Uncle Chenbei seemed to be a man who knew the goods. When he saw the goods in Yulin's hand, his cloudy eyes suddenly lit up with a sparkling light. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 840. Zizu brewing is a specialty of Tianjian sect. There is a purple bamboo forest in Fairy Mountain. It is full of purple bamboo. Even though there are no flowers in this purple bamboo forest, you can still smell waves of elegant fragrance when you get closer. It is said that this purple bamboo is a special product near Xiaolian Temple in Hezhu, Xinyu. Many years ago, an ancestor of the Tianjian sect was addicted to alcohol, so he spent a lot of effort to transplant the soil and purple bamboo from Xinyu Hezhu to the Fairy Mountain, and it actually survived. When the purple bamboo shoots are just beginning to grow, a special technique is used to inject special wine into the bamboo cavity. Then, set up the excellent spirit gathering array near the purple bamboo forest. As the purple bamboo grows day by day, it absorbs morning dew and night frost. Over time, every drop of moisture penetrates into it. For at least 10 years, good wine will be perfect. But these 10 years are just basic requirements. It takes 10 years to make wine, and 1 year to make wine. Zizuniang means that this wine has been grown in Zizu for 60 years, so it can be called a fairyland old cellar. The production cycle of Zizu wine is fast. Once it is released, it is produced in tons and tons, and even ordinary disciples can drink it. It has the effect of prolonging life, helping to improve qi, and it is particularly fragrant. As for Zizuniang, the output is rare, after all, the required years are there. Only those with some status in the sect can drink it. It's a good thing that not every monk from Tianjian sect is good at this. Otherwise, just that small forest would not be able to meet such demand. Chenbei is indeed a good drinker. As soon as he saw it, he recognized that this was Zizunang, not ordinary Zizu wine. Just look carefully at the sealed bamboo joints, which are purple with black and pink with moist, as if they have gone through vicissitudes of life and have been there for a certain period of time. Chenbei suddenly blushed and didn't even care about the chores. He dropped his axe and led Yulin to his room. After slamming the door shut, Chenbei lit the oil lamp and breathed a sigh of relief. Yulin looked around. The action of closing the door and Chen Bei secretly lighting the oil lamp was quite similar to lighting a lamp in the toilet. Hey, Xiaolin, how did you know that I are so good at this? Yilin pointed to the back of Chen Bei's butt. One day I accidentally dug in the soil and buried a few jars there. Chen Bei was stunned. Did you dig into my room? No wonder he noticed that the soil on the old secret cellars had been disturbed before. Ahem, accident, accident. Yilin quickly stuffed the purple bamboo wine into Chen Bei's hand. Chen Bei laughed twice. He didn't ask about the origin of the wine. He drank it before talking. If I have wine today, I will get drunk today. Yilin handed over the carpenter's knife, and Chen Bei held it in his hand. After hesitating for a moment, he cruelly chopped open the zizi seal. Suddenly, the fragrance overflows like flowers and honey. Yilin also started drinking. Although he is not good at wine, this purple bamboo brew has been brewed for 60 years. It tastes like drinking honey, sweet but not greasy, fragrant but not bright, melts in the mouth and is refreshing. The taste tastes so much higher than ordinary drinks. Yilin Chun drank this thing as a drink. It was not in vain anyway. It was said that it was very helpful to practice. While he drank the 60th grade zizi brew, he felt deeply for the generosity of the two masters. Gratitude. The old man and the young man were grateful and enjoyed themselves while drinking the wine stored by the two old men. Drinking and drinking together for 3 rounds. Yilin let out a wine burp and turned slightly red. This purple bamboo wine doesn't taste like alcohol when you drink it, but when it enters your throat, it burns vigorously in your belly like a fire, which is particularly refreshing. I am drunk. Yilin muttered. In his eyes, Chen Bei in front of him seemed to have learned the clone technique and had a double image. No, you're not drunk. Chen Bei poured another sip into his mouth. He was in a mood and decided to drink some wine. So Chen Bei generously dug out a jar from the wine hidden in the house. After the two wolfed down the purple bamboo wine, they directly used the Diabolo as a cup and drank from the jar. Happy. Chen Bei breathed out a breath of alcohol, but Yilin didn't notice that in the forest in the distance, a group of wild cranes were startled, and a large area of the gloomy jungle was overwhelmed by a gust of wind. Yilin didn't expect that the purple bamboo brew would be so high, but at this moment, not only did he not feel drunk, he also felt very awake and his mind was extremely active. Being slightly tipsy, Yilin expressed her troubles. Uncle Chen, I want to ask you, how can two completely different systems be integrated? System, Chen Baigzi raised his eyes and expressed that he did not understand this term. It's like Buddhist Kung Fu and Taoist Kung Fu. You bastard, Chen Bei was trembling with anger, how can Taoist Kung Fu and Buddhist Kung Fu be mixed up together? But I have to hang out. Then if you can do it, then go ahead burp. But I can't get along. Yilin raised her head and drank it in one gulp. Hey, kid, you're walking too fast. Chen Bei pointed at Yilin's nose and laughed with disdain on his face. Sometimes, walking too fast may not be a good thing. Slow down your steps and look back. Take a look, maybe you will find something unexpected. Really? Hiccup, I also think I'm pretty fast. This is the trouble of smart people. Yilin shook his head and sighed, exhaling the fragrance of wine. Yeah, the troubles of smart people. Chen Bei didn't know what he thought of, and a touch of sadness appeared in his turbid eyes, but as soon as his wrinkled eyelids opened and closed, the sadness disappeared again. By the way, I want to go to Fangyuan Mountain to learn formation skills, but those two stubborn rams refuse. What should I do? Array technique. What formation technique are you going to learn if you have nothing to do? I like it. Tisk, they refused, so you stole their purple bamboo wine? This is purple bamboo wine, a Jiazi wine, damn, how dare you? In fact, what Chen Bei was thinking at the time was, why didn't I have such shame when I was young? If you have such a face, You can't drink any wine. Ahem, don't talk nonsense. I'm suing you for defamation. That's a loan. It's a loan. Do you understand? Good borrowing, wonderful borrowing. I've been craving for it for many years. Can I borrow some more tomorrow? Yilin was stunned. Qianbei was so bold that he actually remembered the elder's wine collection. He hesitated for a moment, thinking that the wine was indeed delicious, but there were only 7 bottles in the wine cellar of Mr. Gong Yang. Yilin secretly took 2 bottles, and that left 5 bottles. If you take it again, it seems a bit excessive. Thinking of this, Yilin lowered her voice guiltily and whispered, "Isn't this bad? Lao Chen, I didn't think you were that timid." Qianbei also worked hard for a good amount of wine, and encouraged him with the courage of wine. "Tch, am I cowardly? I know right from wrong, big right and wrong, and cannot be overcome." Snapped. Qianbei squinted and threw an inconspicuous token at Yilin's feet. "Take this crap and go to Fangyuan Mountain. You said you wanted to become a disciple. Ren Qingshan has to accept it even if he doesn't want to." Aha! The token almost hit the ground with a thud. Yilin's hand speed was so fast that she had the token in her arms in an instant. This sudden burst of hand speed made Qianbei stunned and felt incredible in his heart. What kind of hand speed can a half-drunk and half-awake person have? Are you using a forbidden technique? It's such a big deal. Let's have a drink with Lao Chen. Let's drink Zizu brew tomorrow. Hey, cheers. To the wine. Dry. Yilin didn't know when she fell asleep. When she opened her eyes, Yilin felt like she was crawling out of a garbage heap. Looking at the wine jars on the ground, Yilin gradually recalled what happened last night and felt her scalp numb. Damn, I drank too much. He is still a child. Uncle Chen, how dare you get a child drunk? Yilin couldn't help but open the door and rushed out, only to find that the sun was already high in the sky and it was clearly noon. And now the difficult question before Yilin is, which day is this noon hour? He walked on the path while recalling what happened that night when he was drunk. Uncle Qianbei probably went to work, but he didn't find him along the way. What surprised Yilin was that the purple bamboo wine was indeed no ordinary wine. When he woke up with a hangover, he didn't have any common hangover discomforts such as headache, nausea, and heart palpitations. Instead, he was full of energy and walked quickly. When he ran, he felt that his legs were a little longer. When he checked it carefully, he was even more surprised. He practiced the Tianjian Sex entry-level classic sword heart miscellaneous records, which was to lay the foundation. He had practiced a few cyclones and barely reached the 5th level of receiving qi. However, after a few nights of hangover, when he woke up, he had reached the 8th level of receiving qi. This wave is a shotgun exchange for a cannon. Because he ran in a hurry, a thin layer of sweat broke out on his body. If you look closely, you can see that there is a little bit of black and greasy dirt in the sweat, which is so dirty that Yilin wants to rush back to the room immediately, get a basin of water, wash well, and make herself clean. On the way, Yilin didn't get any fragments, but she figured out many things. He touched the inconspicuous token in his arms, thoughtfully. It turns out that Uncle Chen is really the hidden examiner in the handyman class. It turns out that this is such a setting. About noon, Yilin worked hard to return to the front of the preaching garden. At this moment, the door of the preaching garden is open, wide open. It feels like just come in if you feel like it. Yilin froze for a moment in front of the door. The open door led directly to the courtyard. In the yard, the 2 masters were convulsed for some unknown reason, with black faces and curled lips. One was holding up the white piece, the other was holding the black piece, with both hands raised high. Yilin walked from the door to the chessboard, and neither of them moved their hands for more than 10 seconds. Seems to be waiting for something. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 841. Yilin stepped forward to take a look. I discovered that this game of chess had actually been played. He silently stepped forward and carefully packed up each chess piece, clearly distinguishing black and white, and placed them in the bowl in front of the two of them. After completing the entire set of actions, Yilin did enough superficial work for about 10 minutes. Gong Yanghe sighed softly and threw the black piece on his finger into the chess bowl beside him. Gong Yangbai made the same move. The two of them, from beginning to end, watched Yilin's move of packing up the chess pieces in silence. It wasn't until Yilin packed up that they both spoke at the same time. Do you want to go to Fangyuan Mountain? Yilin nodded. Pity. Pity. At this time. Yilin hasn't answered yet. A crane with snow-white wings hovered down from the sky and stayed outside the door. The crane lowered its head and made poses, as if waiting. Yilin didn't expect that the second elder was so silent that he even called the bus crane for him in advance. So, Yilin turned around and held his hands towards Gong Yanghe and Gong Yangbei. Gong, disciple just wants to experience the mystery of the formation technique. Go ahead. Come back often. Ram Black and Ram White moved in unison, both waving their hands impatiently. Yilin turned around and walked out the door. As soon as he crossed the threshold, Gong Yangbai suddenly said, "Who did you drink with yesterday?" The two of them had the same mind, and Gong Yanghe also said, "Who is it?" Yilin hesitated for a moment, thinking of Chen Bei in the handyman class, but in the end, without saying anything, she climbed on the crane and flew away. Behind him, there was the sound of chess pieces hitting the chessboard hard. Return. Of course he will come back. Yilin thought of the agreement she made with Chen Bei when she was tipsy last night. The cranes flew and flew. Float and float. When the crane flapped its wings, it blew the fine hairs on Yilin's face, making Yilin itch. The flight trajectory of each crane seems to have a fixed route. It's really just like a bus. There were flocks of cranes coming and going in the sky, but none of them collided with each other. Yilin rode a crane and crossed over from the floating fairy island. Many monks passing by saw Yilin's clothes and gave them secret advice. Yilin was still wearing the clothes of a registered disciple, with a registered disciple badge hanging around her waist. Logically speaking, the registered disciple has no right to take the crane bus, but he did get on it and felt quite comfortable, so he attracted a lot of onlookers from his fellow disciples. Practicing Taoist skills seems to have the effect of prolonging life. In short, at a glance, among the senior sisters and brothers in the sect, the women are as beautiful as flowers, and the men are handsome. I don't know how old the grandparents are behind the skin. Thinking of this, the world of Yilin's secret monks is very dangerous. In the past, you had to take off your makeup to find a partner. When looking for a partner among monks, there seems to be no way to confirm a person's age except skin picking. This is really scary when you think about it. While thinking wildly, Yilin flew over the mountains and approached the outside of Fangyuan Mountain. Yilin remembered what Jian Nanchun said, that there were terrible restrictions outside Fangyuan Mountain. If he flew around, he might be innocently attacked by air defense and nuclear weapons, but he would be fine riding a crane. From the naked eye, there is nothing unusual around Fangyuan Mountain. There were so many monks in Tianjian sect that Yilin did not dare to use telekinesis to detect the restrictions ahead. After all, telekinesis is also a manifestation of mental power, and spiritual consciousness is also another use of the spirit. There are similarities between the two. If telekinesis is released rashly, it will easily make people in the door. The old guy noticed something was wrong with him, which made things worse. In the distance, the mountain peak floating in mid-air had a faint strange aura. This breath made goosebumps rise all over Yilin's body. He subconsciously squinted his eyes and looked at the mountain carefully with his naked eyes. The outline of the mountain gradually became slightly distorted in Yilin's eyes. But when Yilin blinked again, the distortion disappeared again. Interesting. Yilin nodded secretly. He seemed calm on the surface, but he was excited in his heart. He slapped the crane's butt and shouted, "Brother bird, speed up. Choo choo choo." Being slapped hard by Yilin, the crane under his crotch suddenly convulsed, letting out a trembling cry, and spitting out a few mouthfuls of white saliva. It seemed that he was extremely scared. Immediately afterwards, Brother Zion, he suddenly started to accelerate. The closer we get to Fangyuan Mountain, the more distorted the scenery, light, and trees are. Yilin felt like he was in an invisible maze. After a moment of trance, he realized that he had actually arrived. The crane trembled, as if it was afraid that Yilin would kill it, and unexpectedly threw Yilin to the ground. At a faster speed than when it came, it disappeared in a flash. Hiss. Yilin did not dare to use any strange abilities, so she could only let the crane throw him to the ground. Yilin rubbed her butt that hurt from the fall, and shouted in the direction where the crane left, "I'll eat you sooner or later." Crane. Fangyuan Mountain, this name, makes Yilin feel particularly familiar. Yilin walked up the mountain on the bluestone path. Found on the top of the mountain, it is another villa. The decoration style of Biwen is slightly different from that of Chuandayuan. There are no flowers or grass growing in this yard, but there are many jagged and strange rocks piled around it. There is a bit of forcefulness in the coldness, which makes people unpredictable and incomprehensible. At first glance, it looks like a rock, but at a second glance, it looks like a rugged mountain peak or a ferocious monster, which makes people shudder. Outside the garden, there is a small pond. In the pond, a small water wheel rotates on its own, splashing water. The yard is empty. At a glance, it covers an area of thousands of square meters. But at this moment, the yard was a little crowded. Because it was full of people. Disciples wearing different costumes waited patiently in the courtyard. Some people pop a pill into their mouths from time to time, which is a food pill used to fill their stomachs. When Yilin came closer, as his clothes rubbed against each other, he remembered that he was sweating all over after being hung over. He hadn't washed up yet, and his whole body was sticky. So he glanced inside and found that everyone else was waiting, so he walked outside to the pond, pulled out his wide belt, exposed his upper body, hummed a tune, and used the belt as a towel while soaking in the water in the pond. Rubbing your back happily. The clear water in the pool became a bit turbid as Yilin rubbed her back, but this was not a problem. After finishing sorting, Yilin returned to Biwen and found that those people were still waiting. He looked around and searched for a while. Oh, he really found an acquaintance. Yilin stepped forward, looked at the generous figure, smiled slightly, patted the other person's shoulder, and sat down beside him. "Ah! It's you." The latter was stunned. That person was the Emperor Ili who had been mentioned before. He stayed in the handyman class for 10 years before finally ending his handyman career. Yilin never expected that the two of them would meet here. The two had no close friendship when they were in the handyman class. What's the other party's name? Yilin thought for a moment and quickly recalled the other person's name. The surname is Zhong, the given name is Lin, Zhong Lin. Old Zhong, why are there so many people here? Based on her biological age, there is nothing wrong with Yilin calling her Fang Lao Zhong. Old Zhong's life in the handyman class was almost as old as Yilin's. Pretend to be young, who can't? Zhonglin looked straight at the familiar Yilin, his lips moved, numerous questions popped up in his heart. Why did this guy come out? Hasn't he only been there for half a year? Why did it come out? How could be? This is impossible. Questions were swirling in Zhonglin's mind, but after wondering for a long time, he finally forced himself to swallow all the questions. his eyes were slightly dull, and he replied, "You don't know? A month ago, the elder of the formation said he wanted to recruit 10 inner disciples. These people are all waiting for the spot of the inner disciples of the formation elder." A month ago, Yulin looked slightly stunned. "So you know, these hundreds of people have been sitting here for a month?" "It's just a month." Zhonglin shook his head and finally recovered from the shock of Yulin coming out after only half a year. His eyes showed determination and he gritted his teeth and said, "If you have the chance to enter the inner gate in this life, don't tell me it's January, even if it's a year or 10 years, why not? This kid has a promising future." Yulin secretly sighed at Zhonglin's great perseverance. No wonder he could work as an oddball for 10 years without any complaints. He turned out to be the kind of person who was dedicated to the cause and had no distractions. Even if he died, he would have no regrets. The courtyard was quiet, with occasional small conversations. After explaining to Yulin the reason for the large number of people at the scene, Zhonglin closed his eyes and said no more. He has been sitting for a month and he is still suffering. Yulin was not that perseverant. Fangyuan Mountain was quite large. When he got tired from sitting, he went out to pick mushrooms and wild fruits on the mountain. While the night was dark, he secretly lit a fire, cooked the food and ate it. Don't underestimate these wild vegetables and mushrooms. These are grown by gathering the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. They are particularly nourishing. As Yulin ate them, they became delicious. Later, she changed to other cooking methods such as steaming, boiling, roasting, and stewing. It also gave Yulin a different taste. During the day, Yulin returned to the yard, took out an unknown piece of wood, took out a carpenter's knife, and carefully carved on the cylindrical wood. He actually didn't want to carve anything. It's just that as a carpenter, he has been accustomed to passing the time in this way over the years, looking for inspiration, and seeing if he can make some new tricks. For example, he can explode hearts, fireworks, grenades, and the like. In this way, Yulin is in Fangyuan Mountain. The wait is 7 days. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 842. Biwen. Inside the house. In a place where no one was looking, a fat Taoist priest and a young boy in a blue shirt were sitting and standing, talking softly, looking through the thin paper window at the hazy crowd in the courtyard. The fat old man is the legendary formation elder, Ren Qingshan. The little boy beside him has white teeth and delicate facial features, making it difficult to tell the male from the male. The child looked outside the house, bowed and reminded the Taoist. "Master, it's time." "Oh, why have these years been full of crooked melons and cracked dates?" There was a gentle smile on the Taoist's face. His plump face had fine skin and smooth skin, making people unable to notice the passage of time. If the words he said with such a smile were heard by people outside, they would probably all have to hammer their chests, hammer out their hard work. "Master, don't panic, the lineage of Chuande Yuan is even more withered." The child opened his innocent eyes and smiled brightly. "That makes sense." Ren Qingshan was satisfied after hearing this. He gently placed an ordinary stone on the table in front of him. The edges and corners of the stone have long been smoothed, and the surface is as smooth as a mirror, as if someone has carved out the patina. "Go ahead." After putting down the plastered stones, the elder in charge of the formation spoke softly to the child. "Okay, master. I will recruit 10 satisfactory junior brothers and sisters for you." The child obediently hammered Ren Qingshan's back a few times, making Ren Qingshan smile. Then he picked up the corner of his long skirt and walked out of the garden with small steps. Bang! The crisp sound of the bell drowned out all the noise in an instant. Yes, the sound of the small bell brings all whispers to silence. Strange depressing feeling. The child was smiling and fair-skinned. He was wearing a long emerald green dress and women's clothes, and he looked more like a boy. And his bare feet, Each toe was round, white, and tender, as if glowing with light. When the child walks around, his long skirt floats up and the sound of bells is heard. It turned out to be his ankle, with a red rope tied on both sides. A small golden bell was strung on one end of the red rope, which made a tinkling sound, like the sound of nature. Junior brothers and sisters, you have been waiting for a long time. I am the flower girl. Today, I will assess you on behalf of Master. The flower girl's voice is as clear and moving as the bells on his feet. When he spoke, everyone sitting quietly in the courtyard of the villa, except Yilin, involuntarily raised their heads and looked at the young man wearing an emerald green dress who came out of the house. No one dares to look down upon the flower boy because of his immature appearance. It is said that the flower boy is the favorite disciple of the elder who is currently in charge of the formation, and one of the popular candidates for the direct disciple of Fangyuan Mountain. Among those who meditate, whether they are just starting out or have been in the practice for a while, almost all have heard of the name Flower Girl. Whenever Ren Qingshan travels, he is always accompanied by a flower girl. The master and apprentice are inseparable, which shows that the flower girl is deeply doted on by Ren Qingshan. Yilin, who was thinking, finally raised his head, and the secret passage finally began. The flower girl had a slight smile on her face. After a simple opening remarks, the flower girl went straight to the topic without saying any nonsense. She stood on the long table in front of the room and raised her sleeves. After swinging his sleeves, an elegant incense burner appeared on the table. The flower girl smiled and tapped on the table. Around you, the flower girl drew a circle. The content of the assessment is very simple. The disciple who can get out of the circle within the time limit of 3 pillars of incense will be considered as passing the assessment and is qualified to become an inner disciple of Fangyuan Mountain. When everyone present heard this, they were immediately confused. Round. Where is the circle? Look. At this time, someone couldn't help but exclaimed and pointed not far away. Some people in the crowd discovered clues one after another. While the flower girl was knocking on the table to distract everyone's attention, along the edge of the courtyard wall and on the soft soil, the flower girl didn't know when and what tool she used to draw a large circle on the ground, and surrounded hundreds of people in the circle. The circle is very large, and the edge of the circle is still more than 10 steps away from the people on the outermost edge of the crowd. Of course, these short dozens of steps, if you say 1 step, seems a bit wild, but those present are junior chi practitioners who have experienced the torment of the handyman class. They have weak cultivation and their physique is far superior to ordinary people. If you really want to step out, it will only take a moment. After saying that, the flower girl lit 3 sticks of incense on the incense burner, retreated to the door, and said no more. It's already started. On the incense burner, cigarettes were lit, and many people were shocked to realize that after the flower girl finished explaining the rules, the assessment began without saying a word. Oops. One by one, the outer disciples who were determined to win suddenly stood up. When those people stood up, it seemed that due to sitting for a long time, there were crackling sounds in the joints in the lower back, and their legs were sore and numb. But they no longer care about their numb legs. Some people are rushing to be the first to complete the assessment, hoping to win the crown and impress their future master. Without saying a word, they suddenly move their legs and sprint towards the 100-meter sprint. Rush outside the circle. It was only a short distance of about 10 steps, and they arrived in the blink of an eye, but the few people rushing outside the circle line were walking in a crooked way, as if they were drunk. But even so, they still worked hard to get closer to the outside of the circle. After a while, they finally came to the limit and took a step forward. When the others saw that the first few people were doing so smoothly, many of the outer disciples who planned to observe secretly changed their expressions instantly and couldn't sit still. This time, there were more than 10 people, unable to hold their breath, they took steps forward. At this time, something strange happened. The first few people to move their legs were obviously about to step out of the circle, but at the last moment before landing, they all turned around in a strange way, and then turned back again. Judging from their faces and expressions, their pupils were dilated, their mouths were opened wide, and their breathing was rapid. It seemed that they had seen something terrifying and their thoughts were agitated. You are indeed worthy of being the most proud inner disciple of the Formation Elder. Many people were surprised and happy when they saw the flower girl's ability. What was shocking was that from the moment the flower girl left the room to the moment she finished speaking, in just a few breaths, she had laid out a maze that no one could see through. The good news is that even the flower girl under the elder who is in charge of the array has such skills. If he is lucky enough to be favored by Ren Qingshan and learn a few skills, how can he not succeed in this big world? They are different from Yilin. Yilin came here on a whim, just as she was told. But before they came, they had done enough work. Fang Yuanshan, the Formation Elder, Ren Qingshan, judging from that name, it goes without saying that he is good at formation techniques. As for the assessment, it is nothing more than working hard on the basis of formation skills. In terms of functions, formation techniques can be roughly divided into 4 categories: sleep, confusion, killing, and chaos. The trapping formation, as the name suggests, can trap the enemy within a square or circle. Those who enter the formation are confused and it is difficult to fly with wings. Killing formation, unlimited murderous potential, life and death are determined by heaven. Chaotic formations, chaotic gods killing hearts, moodiness. At this moment, the flower girl set up a formation with every movement of her hands. Judging from the performance of the intruders, they were wandering around in the formation like blind flies. The formation under their feet seemed to be a trapped formation. But looking at their eyes, they seemed to have seen some illusion, and this seemed to be a maze. Everyone was horrified. Seeing the poor performance of the seniors, those who stood up later did not dare to be careless and walked forward cautiously. One wrong step, every step is shocking. The huge courtyard soon became a mess as the number of invaders increased. A group of outer disciples were stupidly circling on the spot, and some even bumped into each other. After letting out a cry of pain, the two people facing each other seemed invisible to each other. They turned around and walked behind each other. Men bump into women, women bump into men, men go on top of men, women go down on women. The scene is chaotic and very lively. Yilin hadn't gotten up yet, watching a group of people jumping around in front of her, thinking secretly. Soon, a stick of incense burned out. The second pillar of incense was half burned. Only a dozen or so people were still sitting on the ground. These people include Yilin and Zhonglin. Not everyone is mature enough, some people don't dare and don't understand. Zhonglin, who was sitting next to Yilin, had bloodshot eyes. He kept scanning and searching the empty scene in front of him, mumbling words as if he was looking for something. His eyes swept over the flower girl, the 3 sticks of incense, the jagged rocks, and even every grain of sand on the ground. In the blink of an eye, the second stick of incense burned out, and the third stick of incense was like a reminder, making Zhonglin sweat profusely and look pale. Zhonglin shook his upper body and prepared to stand up and break into the formation. Even though he was unsure, he didn't have much time, so he could only fight. If you don't work hard, how do you know it won't work? What if it happens? Zhonglin gritted his teeth and prepared to give it a try. Just when he made up his mind. Next to her, Yilin, who had lowered his head to carve wood carvings not long ago. Except for a brief moment of reflection, he was as comfortable and relaxed as an outsider. He smiled and said to Zhonglin in a low voice. "Shh, don't move. If you want to pass the test, just listen to me." Under Yu Zhonglin's astonished gaze, the young man smiled jokingly. "Don't move around until the 3 sticks of incense burn out. Sit still. Infinity Throne." Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 843. It goes without saying that Zhonglin, who was able to survive 10 years in the handyman class and finally stand out, has a tough mind. He comes from a poor family in the secular world. It's different from the eldest princess. 10 years ago, when Zhonglin was 7 years old, a bloodthirsty demon massacred his village and his parents died. A monk from the Heavenly Sword sect passed by, cut off the demon with his sword, and took him back to the Heavenly Sword sect. He felt that his life would change as a result. The elder in charge of the formation made an exception and recruited 10 inner disciples, 1 carrot and 1 hole, one was missing and the other was missing. The hundreds of outer disciples who came here were all here for this trap. Even among them, many people initially hoped to join the disciples of the Discipline Elder or the Sword Elder. Within the Tianjian sect, the Discipline Elder and the Sword-holding Elder are the most popular candidates for masters within the sect. But there was no way. The court of the Discipline Elder and the Sword-bearing Elder was crowded and already full. The other outer disciples looked at it eagerly, wanting to lick it but couldn't wait for the opportunity. Zhonglin gritted his teeth and prepared to stand up. Although he had put a lot of effort into formation skills in order to join Renqingshan's sect, his attainments were shallow and he was unable to see through the flower boy's methods. But now, the 3 sticks of incense are about to burn out, so I have to go up. Just when Zhonglin was about to try to break into the formation, Yulin's reminder came to his ears. Zhonglin's first reaction was that Yuren was kidding. Not moving, waiting to be eliminated? Do you know how many years I, Zhonglin, have been waiting for this opportunity? After Yilin said that, he lowered his head again, whittled the wood, and said no more. Zhonglin looked back at Yilin. A high-spirited young man with a smile on his face, calm and indifferent. Somehow, he didn't believe it originally, but Zhonglin believed it inexplicably. Zhonglin had a ridiculous idea deep in his heart. If he didn't believe it, the other party might stand up and beat him. As a result, Zhonglin's buttocks sitting on the ground just lifted up for a moment, and then he suddenly pressed them back down. He took a deep breath and his limbs trembled slightly. One by one, young boys and girls raised their buttocks high and entered the formation. One by one, they were confused in the formation and fell into a puzzle. Zhonglin had no time to pay attention to the others. Instead, he stared at the last incense that was about to burn out, struggling more than anyone else in his heart. He was still thinking about Yulin's words over and over in his mind. Why doesn't it move? Why can't we move if we want to pass the assessment? Why? Is it fun? It's not fun. Time up. The flower girl's voice interrupted Zhonglin's thoughts and brought him back to reality. As the last incense ashes fell into the incense burner and the sandalwood was extinguished, Zhonglin and Yilin saw a blurry scene before their eyes. After a sudden change, they suddenly found that they had moved their positions and were sitting by the courtyard wall at some point. In front of the two of them was the line. They're outside the bounds. Zhonglin was shocked. When did it come out? Zhonglin looked up in surprise at this unexpected result and found that after the end, there were 5 other people outside the circle like them. Including Yilin and Zhonglin, there are 7 people in total. 3 women and 4 men. The oldest one is a tall young man with a short beard. He seems to be in his mid-20s. He must have suffered a lot in the handyman class. The youngest is a little girl with braids, who looks to be about 11 or 12 years old. With her flawless eyes wide open, she curiously looks at the other fellow disciples who have passed the flower girl examination. Time is up. Yilin said softly, with a bit of regret in his tone, but when he stopped the carving movement, he seemed to regret that there was not enough time for him to complete the work at hand. The flower girl's long sleeves were swept away, and the hundreds of people in the circle woke up in confusion. When they found that they were in the circle, some felt sad and lost, some hugged each other and cried, and some hugged the neighbor and cried bitterly. But no one dared to mess around here. It was normal for their skills to be inferior to others. Under the guidance of the flower girl, the disqualified ones went down the mountain in despair. From today onwards, the flower boy is very happy to meet all the junior brothers and sisters. The flower girl landed next to everyone, winked and said with a smile, "Welcome to join the Fangyuan mountain lineage." This opportunity to skip the outer door and go straight to the inner door is very rare. There may not be such an opportunity in 10 years. In other words, this is a great opportunity. Except for Yilin, the other disciples were all excited and could not restrain themselves. With that said, the flower girl distributed the exclusive waist badges for the inner disciples to 7 of them respectively. The number of the waistband is of course also random, but the number is smaller, 2 digits. The number Yilin got was 23. The 7 people introduced each other. Except Zhonglin and Yilin, the other 3 women and 2 men are Dingrou, Yiqiu, Gongsun Yan'er, Chaikong, and Gazwang. Yilin simply wrote down the names and did not talk to each other because he felt that he would not have many close friendships in the future. But what makes Yilin feel strange is that maybe because the customs of each lineage are different or something. Jian Nanchun had introduced himself before, a disciple of Tianjianmen's sword generation. It seems that his name contains seniority, but now the flower girl seems to there are no plans to change their names. But that's okay. Yilin has been used to people calling him Lin Yi in this life, but suddenly it became Jian Yi, Jian 23 or something like that. He was still a little uncomfortable. Sounds like a good sword, a sword. Thinking of the scene when he and Jian Nanchun met in the future, when he called Jian Nanchun and said senior brother Jian in return, Yilin couldn't help but feel chills all over her body and shook her head repeatedly. If this is the case, it would be fine if the inner disciples did not join. Ren Qingshan did not show up during the whole process, and the flower boy explained the rules of Fangyuan Mountain to the newcomers. Every morning, I will teach you on behalf of the master. On the 15th day of every month, master will preach in person. Please remember to cherish the opportunity and don't delay. After 3 months, master will take you all to Wenjian Mountain to find your natal flying swords. If you perform well, you may even have a chance to receive the Sumuru precepts. The flower girl mentioned the precautions in Fangyuan Mountain by the way. For example, where can I go and where can I not go? Where you can go during the day but not at night, where you can go at night but not during the day, etc. Yilinji remembered the complicated rules like this, but he was so dizzy after being told them that he secretly thought that there were many more rules than Chuandao Garden, and wondered if he had found the wrong place. But when Yilin remembered the purpose of coming to Fangyuan Mountain, she strengthened her thoughts, and never forgot her original intention. After the flower girl finished speaking, she asked Yilin and others to find an unowned wooden hut in Fangyuan Mountain as a residence. From the beginning to the end, the flower girl never mentioned the details of the assessment, let alone how they saw through the mystery of the formation. Zhonglin looked confused and thought that he could pass the assessment. He was obviously opportunistic and uneasy. When the others followed the instructions and left the yard and found a wooden hut in the Fangyuan Mountain to settle down, Yilin hesitated for a moment and said to the flower girl's delicate back, "This, senior brother, please stay." Yilin was hesitant whether to call the other person senior sister or senior brother, but after careful observation, Yilin felt that it was more appropriate to call him senior brother. Sure enough, there was no displeasure on the flower girl's face, with a sweet smile on her face. This smile looked very comfortable in the eyes of others, but Yilin always felt that there was something hidden behind this smile. "Junior brother Lin, I don't know anything, but it doesn't matter." Yilin held the Fangyuan Mountain number 23 inner gate badge that she had just obtained in her hand and asked, "Excuse me, does taking this inner sect badge mean that I can no longer join other elders' sects?" Upon hearing this, the flower girl seemed to have heard a ridiculous joke, covering her mouth and giggling. "Junior brother is straightforward, just say it in front of me, don't say it in front of the master." The qualifications of the inner sect of Fangyuan Mountain, but how can you have such a ridiculous idea when you ask for blessings that no one can ask for? But in addition to formation techniques, I also want to learn something else, such as elixirs, swordsmanship, weapon refining, kimen and so on. Junior brother, it is useless to be greedy. I'm just eager to learn. Don't be ungrateful. The flower girl smiled, but there was a hint of coldness in her clear eyes that was difficult for others to detect. Yulin touched in his arms, took out the wordless waistband that Chenbei had given him when he was drunk, and waved it in front of the flower girl. Can I just be a registered disciple? The kind where I just learn and don't have to take responsibility. Yulin personally believes that there are many benefits to being a registered disciple. You can walk among thousands of flowers without a single leaf touching you. This is. The flower girl's pupils shrank slightly, and the coldness in her eyes disappeared. What surprised him was not because of the wordless waist card in Yulin's hand. What surprised him was that, with his seniority in Tianjian sect, he didn't even recognize what this waist card was. Could it be that this badge was carved by Lin Yi himself to confuse the public? Wow! Suddenly, behind the flower girl, a gust of wind blew out of nowhere. Ren Qingshan, with a slightly fat belly, appeared out of thin air behind the flower girl. Yulin frowned. Although he pretended to be like a little white sheep, his background was there. But when Ren Qingshan appeared, he couldn't react. He didn't notice how Ren Qingshan teleported to Huahua. After childhood. Who gave you this? There was no emotion visible on Ren Qingshan's face, neither salty nor light. Chenbei. Yulin didn't hide anything. Which Chenbei? That Chenbei from the handyman class. When answering, Yulin secretly wondered, could Ren Qingshan mean that there were many Chenbei? After Ren Qingshan confirmed which Chenbei it was, he fell silent. After being silent, Ren Qingshan waved, and under the surprised gaze of the flower girl, he took back the waist badge that represented the identity of the inner disciple, turned around and left, walking back into the house step by step. Lin Yi, a registered disciple of Fangyuan Mountain, from today on, you can listen, but you are not allowed to ask questions. Good. Yulin immediately agreed, took back the wordless token, and smiled happily. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Xueshi. Chapter 844. In this way, Yulin gained the status of a registered disciple. There were 2 belt tags hanging around his waist. One is from Mission Garden and the other is from Fangyuan Mountain. The sunrise is red in the east. The next morning, Yulin woke up from the wooden hut in Fangyuan Mountain. While washing, she chatted with the 3 mini mother spirits for a while, and then arrived at the top of Fangyuan Mountain on time, in Ren Qingshan's villa. The treatment of people cannot be generalized. When he was in Missionary Garden, he had his own small room. Once here, we can only live in a wooden hut, and there is a sharp contrast in treatment. When Yulin arrived, the other 6 people were waiting here early. The tips of Zhonglin's hair were even wet with dew, and they condensed into bunches and stuck to his head, as if he got up in the dark at night and waited here early. Do you want it to be curled like this? Yulin murmured something in a low voice and quietly sat at the back of the crowd. Because Yulin turned on like a shadow, which reduced her presence, no one noticed Yulin's arrival. They waited here for another half hour. The flower girl finally appeared. He distributed a small handwritten book to each of them, in which he recorded some of his experiences in formation techniques in detail. When he walked up to Yulin, the flower girl held out Xiao Ben's thin hand and hesitated for a moment, but still handed it out. Master said that this special named disciple can observe but cannot ask questions. Everything seemed to be going through a process, and the flower girl started to explain it to you without any nonsense. The formation technique is broad and profound. As they had learned privately before, the functions of formation techniques can be roughly divided into 4 categories: trapping, killing, confusing, and chaos. But in most formations, the organizer will not be limited to a single type of formation. Most of the famous arrays circulating in the market have multiple functions. For example, the super-restricted formation around Tianjianmen Fairyland has all 4 elements. The assessment of the flower girl's casual behavior that day was a composite formation that had 2 functions, confusion and sleepiness. As the flower girl explained, everyone gradually became addicted to the formation, including Yilin. Who can resist unfamiliar knowledge? Yilin suffered from the scholar's disease. He listened to the flower girl's explanation, his thoughts were flying, and he said he had heard it, but in fact he didn't listen completely. Restrictions and formations have the same goal, the flower boy said. Restrictions mostly act on certain objects, mainly killing. But some formations are composed of countless restrictions of different sizes. Once triggered, the power will be shocking. Ghosts and gods cry, no matter how powerful the monk is, once he falls into it, he will not be able to escape. When the flower boy said this, he looked up at the sky. From early morning to dusk, he unknowingly explained to the 7 newcomers for nearly 4 hours. He gently closed the yellowed manuscript in his hand and looked at everyone with a smile. Today's lecture, that's all. As he spoke, the flower boy lit 3 more sticks of incense in the incense burner, and with the curl of sandalwood, the flower fairy tale Yin paused for a moment, then continued, everyone asks a question, and that's it? Except, Lin Yi. After saying that, the flower girl looked past the confused 6 people and landed on the young man sitting quietly in the corner of the courtyard. The setting sun reflected a hazy arc on the young man's silhouette. The young man shrugged, chuckled, seemed not to care, got up and walked away. Others didn't care at all about this brief exchange of glances. As soon as the flower fairy tale ended, they swarmed up like hungry wolves and surrounded the flower girl. Sure enough, it's almost the same as the basics described in Tianxin sword formation. Yilin didn't know if it had something to do with the fact that her intelligence was stretched to the limit by her talent. He always felt that after carefully reading Tianxin sword formation and then listening to the flower girl's narration, it was a bit boring. Yilin already understood what the flower girl said, but it only further confirmed Yilin's speculation. Yilin was originally a master-level figure in magic and crystal patterns. The 2 power systems have certain things in common. Looking at the formations in this world with a master's eye, Yilin saw many interesting points. In this world, formation techniques also use certain media to circulate spiritual energy to achieve various complex functions. But what is completely different from what Yilin has learned in the past is that the Qi refiner's formation system does not care about basic rules such as symmetry and balance at all. In other words, imbalance and asymmetry are the formation techniques of uniqueness. Just like the flower girl showed off in the courtyard yesterday. Yesterday's flower girl actually used words to seduce everyone. As they sat quietly, they were not in the formation at all. Courtyards, jagged rocks, and incense burners, these objects that contain spiritual treasures, form the skeleton of the formation. From the moment they entered the courtyard, half of their feet had already been on the edge of the formation, and their sight was blocked, like a mirage. The flower girl's action of lighting the sandalwood is equivalent to triggering the formation. But the formation is dead. If the interviewers are not allowed in, the formation will be useless. Therefore, Hua Tong said, only those who step out of the circle can pass the assessment. As a result, everyone was deceived, took the initiative to join the battle, and was fooled around. Everyone is outside the circle from the very beginning, so how can we get out of the circle? Therefore, in the end, Yilin used the easiest way to pass the assessment. Since the flower girl is waiting for them to enter, it's okay if they don't. As for breaking the formation, Yilin thinks it's unlikely. Because he saw it. The formation I of the composite formation, which is the core position, is not within sight at all. If Yilin guessed correctly, the real leader of that formation was not the flower girl, but Ren Qingshan, who was hiding in the house. In the final analysis, the flower boy is just Ren Qingshan's tool, responsible for moving the formation flags and adjusting the formation. According to the basics of formation techniques, a complete formation consists of the formation eye, the formation flag, and the formation center. Most of the time, the main formation person takes the position of the center of the formation, allowing the formation to run from fully automatic to semi-automatic. Look, after understanding the most basic core, the rest of the content couldn't be simpler. It's nothing more than deduction. Rearrange and reorganize the 4 core components of the formation in an orderly manner, etc. Yilin walked on the mountain stream road. He held one foot up and kept it down for a long time. A ridiculous thought flashed through Yilin's mind, and she froze, unable to move. Component. Arrangement. Split. Reorganization. Yilin swallowed the thought that just passed through her mind, unwilling to let it go. Humans, sometimes there's what's called a light bulb moment, commonly known as inspiration. But many times, fools ignore inspiration, and wise men suddenly wake up. If Yilin were like this, she might just smile and get over it. But now Yilin's understanding is stretched to the limit. Now Yilin is thinking about the fusion method of crystal pattern technique, magic, and supreme style technique. At this moment, Yilin had the illusion that his head was split open by lightning, and time around him suddenly stood still. Sometimes, walking too fast may not be a good thing. Slow down, look back, take a look, maybe you will find something unexpected. In the past, when the two of them were tipsy in the handyman class, Chen Bei's words seemed to ring in their ears. I see. Yilin rushed to the outer edge of Fangyuan Mountain in one breath. Because he did not have the status of an outer disciple, the bus crane refused to take advantage of him. Yilin stretched out his hand, aimed at the nearest green-fronted crane, and suddenly took action. The crane's wings were contracted, and the invisible hand did whatever it wanted, and was photographed in front of Yilin. The crane raised its head. It is intellectually ignorant. It is said to be enlightened but not yet enlightened. It is said to be ignorant but understands a little bit. A young man with a kind smile lifted the crane's chin and said with a smile, "Take me to the male servant's room, otherwise, I'll eat you." Zion he trembled all over and nodded vigorously, with tears of grievance squeezing out of his eyes. On this day, a named disciple conquered the public crane and left various legends in the crane circle, like thunder. The crane carried the young man and flew in a straight line at super speed until he arrived at the handyman's room. Chen Bei had just finished his day's work and was ready to go to sleep. Yilinfen ran up to Chen Bei in a hurry. Under the confused look in his eyes, Yilin clenched Chen Bei's hand tightly and said in a trembling voice, "Master, I understand." Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Xueshi. Chapter 845. Shortly after, Yilin kidnapped a crane and left Fangyuan Mountain at high speed. Ren Qingshan walked out of the house silently, suspended in mid-air, staring into the distance. After the flower girl dealt with the disciples' questions, she floated silently to Ren Qingshan's side, her eyebrows lowered and her head lowered, looking particularly well behaved. The two were silent for a while, and as the sun set, the flower girl couldn't help but ask in the end, "Lin Yu went down the mountain privately, will master not punish him?" Snapped. As soon as the flower fairy tale finished, I wanted to wait for Ren Qingshan to reply, but what I got instead was a slap in the face. This slap was not for show. Ren Qingshan slapped the left side of the flower girl's face. In a blink of an eye, the left side of the flower girl's face became red and swollen, and bright red blood dripped down the corner of the flower girl's mouth. The beautiful boy's fair skin and blood, red and white, formed a sharp contrast. Talk too much. Ren Qingshan smiled and said 2 words. He had obviously beaten the flower girl, but there was no trace of anger on his face. The flower girl doesn't dare anymore. At the same time, men's handyman class. In front of Chen Bei. The young man looked excited and shouted, "Master, I have enlightened." Chen Bei was confused. When he saw Yilin coming for the first time, he was quite happy. He wondered if this kid had secretly brought some purple bamboo wine. But no. Understood. Puzzled, Chen Bei put his backhand on Lin Yumei's door and looked carefully. After checking for a while, Chen Bei became even more confused. Enlightenment. Isn't it still the 8th level of Naki? What the hell did you realize? I understand your sister. An idea of understanding your sister flashed through Chen Bei's mind, which he could cultivate, but he didn't know how to express it in words. After holding it in for a while, Chen Bei could only let go of his hand and said numbly, "Xiaolin, have you realized, what?" "Oh, I won't be able to explain it for a while, but thank you anyway. I'll treat you to some purple bamboo brew some other time, until you're full." After Yilin finished speaking, just like when he came, before the crane had time to escape, he grabbed the crane's wings and flew into the sky. Chen Bei stared blankly at the boy who was crazy with joy, confused. Isn't it just the 8th level of Naki? It's silly fun or something. Yilin really realized it? He discovered blind spots. He has been struggling with integrating several familiar systems, but fusing them back and forth is nothing more than making himself more proficient in their respective fields. Can't get out, can't get out, can't get out. He could never get out of the original system. Success is knowledge, failure is knowledge. Because of his understanding, Yilin's ideas have been limited to several systems and cannot be broken through. In fact, this cannot be blamed on Yilin. Scientific progress cannot be achieved overnight. Sometimes it often requires the efforts of several generations to succeed. With her inspiration still lingering, Yilin rushed to the handyman class to express her gratitude to Chen Bei. After that, Yilin returned to Fangyuan Mountain under the cover of night. As soon as the crane clicked, the bird squawked and disappeared. Perhaps, the experience of being kidnapped this time made it dare not approach Fangyuan Mountain even half a step closer to the crane. The wooden houses in Fangyuan Mountain are built in every corner. There is an open space around the wooden house. The open space is overgrown with weeds, but with a little repair and a wooden fence, it can be used as a small single-family villa. Yilin returned to the room and thought for a moment. He carefully felt the movement around him. Ren Qingshan and the flower boy didn't seem to pay much attention to him and didn't use their spiritual sense to explore this place. Yilin is now almost certain that Chen Bei has a high status in Tianjian sect. Speaking of which, Yilin's idea was wrong at the beginning. It's so bloody. The peerless strongman hiding in the handyman class. After Ren Qingshan met the wordless token yesterday, he actually sold Chen Bei's face and promised to let Yilin enjoy the treatment of most inner disciples as a named disciple. This wordless token seems ordinary, but it turns out to be of such great use. When Yilin sighed, she put the wordless token close to her body. At this point, he missed the storage space again. There was no storage space, so everything was hidden in clothes, which made Yilin feel a bulge here and a bump there, which was quite uncomfortable. Fortunately, the disciple's robe is designed to be loose and breathable, and has hidden compartments inside, so it can hold many small items. Anyway, Jian Nanchun mentioned before that there are many Sumeru rings hidden in Mount Sumeru. Those who are destined can get them. Why don't you take the time to test your destiny? The manufacturing technology of Sumerna ring has been lost. The ones that are handed down now are all leftovers from ancient times. One is divided into one and the other is missing. Let alone the direct disciples, the inner disciples who are generally talented and have no backing can get one if they want. He couldn't find it, let alone a registered disciple like Yulin. Yulin entered the wooden house, lit an oil lamp with an old fire stick under the bed, sat on the bed with her legs crossed, and pretended to be breathing. He casually laid down a layer of barrier to isolate spiritual consciousness. Even if this method of isolating spiritual consciousness is discovered, there will be nothing to say. He accidentally got involved with Chen Bei, and his favorability seemed to be quite high. If something really happened, he would just throw out the wordless token given by Chen Bei. Yulin now felt that this trick was a trick of pretending to be powerful. Although it is old-fashioned, it is better than the fragrance and it is really useful. Where to begin? Yulin sat for a while, then opened her eyes again, feeling entangled. Although he had some ideas, he didn't know where to start. If the spiritual energy value can be converted into the consumption of all systems, and this spiritual energy value is closely related to the spiritual attribute, then the key lies in the human brain. This inference is so reasonable that we don't even need to elaborate. Thinking of this, Yulin was ready to give it a try first. Theory is just theory. If you don't practice it once or twice, you won't be able to find out the problem. A circle of lines appeared on Yulin's right wrist, which was the supreme style spell, soul leaving the body. He talked about magic and slapped himself on the chest. Everything around him was silent, the insects were no longer chirping, and he floated up into a spiritual state. The translucent soul state was floating in the narrow room. Yulin was also hanging in the air in a cross-legged posture. He held his chin, thinking and observing his body. After all, what is spirit? Is the state of mind the materialization of the ethereal concept of spirit? Can spirit exist independently of the physical body completely? Yulin began to deduce, one idea after another in his mind, first standing up, and then quickly knocking it down and starting again. No, it shouldn't be like this. In his mental state, Yulin frowned, looked at his translucent palm stretched forward, and murmured to himself, if the spiritual energy value is directly linked to the mental state, then in this state, I should be able to release corresponding energy. The skills or abilities are correct. In other words, the mental state is just an external expression of the spirit. This state ultimately depends on the body itself, or a certain tangible and visible organ in the body. No soon, Yulin, who was brainstorming, shook her head again, my spirit, if they also belong to some kind of alternative mental state, then when they materialize, Xiaobai can also use it. The materialization of their skills in life is not truly materialized. Otherwise, what is the difference between that and creating a human being? In other words, the spiritual energy value and mental state depend on something more microscopic and difficult to detect. An organ, or a certain point, a certain core. Suddenly, in a state of mental state, Yulin opened her eyes, a flash of understanding flashing in her eyes. He suddenly floated to the front of the body and looked at his face carefully. To be precise, pay close attention to the position between the eyebrows on the face. Yulin remembered something that had been with him for a long time but had been ignored by him. Every time his spiritual power was depleted, he would feel a tingling sensation between his eyebrows. In the past, Yulin only thought that this was just some kind of reminder, similar to how the death mark would tremble and shake when someone sent a message. It's like a shock, it just serves as a message reminder. But now that I think about it, it seems that doing so is a bit redundant. If you really want to remind the apostles that their spiritual energy points are insufficient, it is better to use a voice reminder. Record the voice of a young lady. When the crisis comes, she will try her best to whisper in the ear, you have been drained, please pay attention to consumption, you are about to fall into a coma due to depletion of spiritual energy. Please find the coma spot to avoid collisions. Isn't this more considerate? With Xiao 11 status, if she couldn't survive, she would be called a mere god. It should be here. When the spiritual energy was exhausted, the something hidden in this location caused pain due to excessive consumption. When Yilin thought of this, she stared at her smooth forehead and slowly approached. On his forehead, there was a piece of dead skin that was the same color as flesh and had grown up with him. Yilin gets closer and closer. He was suddenly worried that that piece of dead skin would block his thoughts. As time flows, an irresistible suction force came. But this time, the suction force didn't come from behind her butt, but from where Yilin's gaze was gazing, which was between the eyebrows of her body. Call out. Yilin did not resist and returned to her original state of mind. But when he opened his eyes again, there was no wooden hut, oil lamp, darkness, or small bed in his field of vision. Before my eyes, it suddenly became clear. The sky and the earth were desolate. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Xueshi. Chapter 846. The sky is full of wind and sand. Black tornadoes twisted and moved in the boundless desert. And now, after Yilin opened her eyes, she was in an oasis in the desert. In the oasis, there are sparse young grasses. In the center, there is a small lake. The water is clear and reflects blue waves, making people want to jump into the lake and commit suicide. Beside the lake, there are a few lonely coconut trees with no coconut fruits on them. Under the trees, sit a few bare stones. Strange scenery. This is where? The question comes naturally. Yilin recalled the process of getting here. He first used the Supreme Flow spell to leave his body and take his mental state out of his body. Then mentally break through the dead skin, drill into the center of the eyebrows, and then open your eyes to arrive here. In other words, is this him, somewhere in his brain? Outside the oasis, there seems to be an invisible barrier. Although the wind and sand are raging outside, blocking the sky and the sun, and tornadoes are rampant, there is no wind in the oasis. There were no waves in the lake, no swaying in the trees, and everything was eerily quiet. In a short period of time, Yilin had a panoramic view of the scenery in front of her. Let's ignore the sandstorm outside the oasis. Something seemed to be floating above the lake. Twinkle and twinkle. Yilin squinted her eyes, but couldn't see clearly, so she could only walk forward. Take a closer look. Yilin was stunned. I couldn't help it immediately and called him a good guy. I saw three things floating above the clear lake. One of them is a snow-white square with light square black lines on it, which looks like a Rubik's Cube. The white Rubik's Cube slowly rotates over the lake. If you look closely, the lines on the Rubik's Cube seem to be changing every moment and are not static. Near the white Rubik's Cube, there are two small translucent windows. I don't know what is on the other side of the windows. There is an unknown scenery faintly reflected on the windows, which changes unpredictably. When Yilin's mind moved, her body floated above the lake on its own. The body also maintained its physical state. When Yilin floated, she touched her body twice and could even feel her own temperature. Yilin floated up to the lake and stepped lightly on the water. The next second, Yilin was surprised to find that even if he didn't use telekinesis, the lake would not sink. It seems this is not real water. Soon, Yilin came to the white Rubik's Cube. Yilin stared closely at the unpredictable patterns on the Rubik's Cube. There seemed to be some kind of strange magic power on it, which suddenly attracted his attention. It seems to look familiar. Yilin thought for a moment and felt that it wouldn't be a big problem to touch it, so she plucked up the courage and stretched out her hand towards the Rubik's Cube. When Yilin's fingers came into contact with the white Rubik's Cube, her eyes flashed and the scenery changed again. Boundless void, boundless darkness. In the darkness, balls of light flickered on and off, extending into the distance. Yilin was stunned. Of course he recognized it. This is the mod space. In other words, that block is the body of the Apocalypse Night module. This is outrageous. Why are you here? Yilin had almost no chaos points, and there was nothing to stay in the module space, so he closed his eyes and silently chanted in his mind to go out. After a feeling of weightlessness, he returned to the oasis. After finding out that the white block was the body of the Apocalypse Night module, Yulin vaguely understood what this oasis in the desert was. Look at those two small windows again. Yulin first floated to the small window on the left, squinted her eyes, and peered in. On the other side of the window, I saw a strange world, with broken earth and broken houses, only black and white. A shameless and unclothed girl with pale skin and rosy skin rolled up into the shape of a cup, floating strangely high in the city. Around the cup, there was a faint flow of pure black air coming from the mouth of the cup. Out. Damn it, it's Xiaomei without any clothes. As soon as Yulin took one look, she knew something was wrong. Before Xiaomei noticed, Yulin quickly looked away. Yeah, quite white. Yulin ignored the scenery in this small window for the time being and turned to look at the other small window. Behind another small window was a frozen night, with a blood moon hanging high in the night sky. In the mountains, there is mist. On the top of a strange skull-shaped mountain, Nai Hongxiu and Bai Xiaoi sat cross-legged and meditated with their eyes closed in a field of bloody flowers. The familiar scenery brought back Yulin's memories. After 14 years, Yulin recognized it at a glance. It was the sea of flowers on the other side of Giwu Mountain. Nai Hongxiu and Bai Xiaoi looked like they were practicing. When Yulin's eyes fell on the two of them, who were breathing with their eyes closed, suddenly opened their eyes, seemingly sensing Yulin's prying eyes. At this time, the small window on the other side without clothes started to shake suddenly. Yulin approached the small window where she was not wearing any clothes, and found Gaojiami with a red face, facing the small window, tapping with her fingers. "Master, are you peeking at Xiaomei?" "Ahem. It's indeed the young master." Gaojiami heard Yulin's cough through the small window, and was surprised and happy. She never expected to meet Yulin in the spiritual residence. The other side. Nai Hongxiu and Bai Xiaoi also started knocking on the window. Yes, it was discovered now. There is a lock on the small translucent window. Yulin opened the lock, and three mother spirits floated out in unison. They looked at the scenery here curiously. Is this the young master's spiritual residence? It looks so desolate. Gaojiami also knew that not wearing clothes would cause public outrage, so she kindly changed into a maid outfit, with black silk as smooth as jade, small high heels, and two furry cat ears in her hair. On the sidelines, Bai Xiaoi looked at the new trick Gaojiami had come up with at some point, feeling secretly resentful and gritting her teeth. Yulin saw that the three mother spirits were starting to fight again after 13 years, so she tactfully changed the subject. "You said this is a spiritual residence." Yulin had never heard of this. Gaojiami's face turned red, but she didn't mention the fact that Yulin peeked at her without clothes just now. She floated behind Yulin obediently, and while massaging Yurin's shoulders, she explained, "Yes, young master, we are spiritual, we have our own residence, and when we are not in the outside world, we stay in our own spiritual residence." Nai Hongxiu's red lips opened slightly, half smiling but not smiling. "I didn't expect the young master to be able to enter here." While enjoying the attentive service of Xiaomei, Yulin frowned slightly. "My place is not as simple as a spiritual residence. It feels more like, to use the magician's theory to explain, it is more like a mental image landscape." When Bai Xiaoi heard this, the corner of his mouth twitched slightly, and he pointed to the wind and sand in the distance. "So, the young master's mental landscape is this desert." Yulin remained silent, unable to refute. One person and three spirits began to explore and play happily in the oasis. As time passed, the three mother spirits discovered that the scenery in the distance seemed to be just a background board. If we want to make a clear metaphor, the scenery is more like a perspective texture used by cheap games to pretend to be expensive, and it cannot stand up to closer inspection and scrutiny. As soon as they approached the outskirts of the oasis, they hit an invisible membrane, which bounced them back with a bang. Gayagiyamimi didn't care about the mere setbacks. She rushed forward with her chest raised, playing, kneading, playing, kneading. It was quite fun. Nai Hungzio and Bai Xiaoi ignored Gaiakinmei, who was amusing herself. They circled the oasis several times and returned to Yilin to report their findings to Yilin. Nai Hungzio said, "Master, your space seems to be connected with our spiritual residence." Bai Xiaoi nodded, "This is most likely the young master's spiritual world." Yilin nodded. He suddenly remembered the performance of Nai Hungzio, Bai Xiaoi, and Gayagiyamimi in their respective spiritual residences. He summoned Gayagiyamimi, who was enjoying herself, and asked together, "What were you doing just now, what?" The three mother spirits looked at each other, as if they didn't want to say anything. But since Yilin asked, they didn't dare to hide it and could only hesitantly tell their secrets. It turns out that their experiences in the Age of Gods gave them new insights. They fought hard in the Age of Gods as heroic spirits, and with the blessing of the Holy Grail, they felt that they were more powerful than ever. So they want to become stronger through various means. At the very least, it can be as strong as the posture in the Age of Gods. When Yilin heard this, she was shocked. He had heard before that a very small number of progressive spirits would evolve independently to some extent. For example, the posture changes inexplicably, or a special ability awakens. I never expected that my three mother spirits would all be progressive. At this time, while chatting, Bai Xiaoi pointed to one of the coconut trees, grabbed Yilin's arm, and shook it, a bit coquettishly. "Hey, young master, I didn't expect coconuts to grow here. I've never drunk coconut juice, can I pick it off and drink it?" "Coconut? Where did I get the coconut?" Yilin followed Gayagiyamimi's hand and counted. "Yo-ho! Under the shadow of the leaves of the coconut tree, there is actually a long and narrow gray-brown coconut hanging upside down under the leaves, motionless. There is also a dense layer of hair on the surface of the coconut. How can coconuts still grow here?" Yilin was puzzled, but he still took out his gun and aimed at the end of the coconut, preparing to knock it down. When he took a quick glance just now, he clearly didn't see any coconuts growing on them. Boom! Yilin fired. The psychic bullet landed on the coconut and was suddenly bounced away. You. Coconut was in pain, and suddenly unfolded its membrane-covered wings, and its two scarlet eyes slowly opened. "That's not a coconut. It's a bat." The pink-eyed little bat squinted its eyes and laughed happily. "Good evening, outsider. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Infinity Throne. Author, Bai Yi. Chapter 847. Yilin's pupils shrank when she saw the coconut transformed into a bat. He dodged and protected the three mother spirits behind him. When the three mother spirits saw Yilin's reflexive actions, they were deeply moved. Their already high favorability level invisibly increased a little. Yilin's fierce reaction made Nai Hungzio, Bai Xiaoi, and Gayagiyamimi react. Nai Hungzio and Bai Xiaoi's eyes were immediately stained with blood, their fangs swelled silently, and a pitch-black horn broke out from under the skin of their foreheads, as if they had entered a ghost transformation posture. Gayagiyamimi quickly changed her clothes and put on a tight-fitting concave and convex armor. At some point, she clenched a bloody hatchet in her hand. It seems that the three mother spirits have not spent the past 13 years in vain, and they have unlocked many new postures that Yilin did not know. "It's green." Yilin had no time to pay much attention to the three spirits' reaction. He stared intently at the bat with its wings spread out on the treetop, as if facing a formidable enemy. "How come that green appears here?" "Bats flap their wings in the sky. A sharp laugh came from the bat's mouth. In an instant, the sky and the earth changed color. Over the oasis, day suddenly turned into night. The originally quiet and windless oasis also had strange gusts of wind blowing. Ah! Green, who appeared in front of Yilin in the form of a bat, paused for a moment, rolled up his wings in mid-air, and seemed to make an elegant bow. Outsider, I'm sorry, I just woke up from a dream. Scared you? After Green finished speaking, the sky that had just turned into night turned into day again. The wind stopped. All the changes that just happened seemed like hallucinations. Yilin looked at the startled Green and hesitated. Why Green appears here is a question. Another problem is that he just shot Green, and he didn't know whether he was angry or not. Call. Yilin took a long breath and calmed down. The elegant Green flapped his wings and came to Yilin, looking into his eyes with his scarlet eyes. Why are you here? Bat wrinkled his arms. Are you humans so forgetful? Yilin was stunned. He suddenly pulled open the gown on his chest, and the light-colored birthmark that had appeared on Yilin's body since birth was extremely clear at this moment. The bat pattern on the skull's left eye blinks playfully, vividly. Nightmare mark. Yes, the bat lazily covered its mouth with its wings and yawned. You finally entered the dreamland. Because it was so boring here, I accidentally fell asleep. You said, this is a dream. To me, everything is just a dream, Green said with a smile. As he spoke, the bat's wings drew a circle in front of Yilin, and the red spots of light, along with the tips of Green's wings, solidified in the air in front of Yilin, forming a chestnut shape. Give me a chestnut. Chestnut? Well, in your terms, I'm going to raise a chestnut. Please lift harder. Lee, are you? I just need to easily seal the exit from here to the outside world. You will always linger in the dreamland, unable to wake up, and fall into an eternal sleep. He. The bat held up the chestnut and finally made a hoarse and cold sound. Laughter. Listening to chestnut, drops of cold sweat began to break out on Yilin's forehead. But he didn't answer and remained silent. The bat laughed and waved its wings, and the chestnut-shaped arc of light dissipated silently. But your dream is so boring. It's no fun to trap you here. Yilin secretly breathed a sigh of relief, but still didn't dare to be careless. Things happened so fast. He never expected that he would be talking to Green in such a weird situation. Yilin had 2 contacts with Green. The first time was in the small town of Green. The second time was in Gugu town. These 2 experiences were both under the influence of trials, and he accidentally broke into Green's territory. But this time, it was in his own spiritual world that Green broke in. Unexpectedly, the nightmare mark that Green left on him in Gugu town caused the 2 to form such a strange connection. Yilin did not think that the Green appearing here was his true body, otherwise Green would not have come in the form of a bat. It was more likely that he would be an existence similar to a clone. You go back first. Yilin thought for a moment and then directed the 3 mother spirits to return to their spiritual residence. Sanling was not happy. They want to advance and retreat together with Yilin. Yilin smiled bitterly and pointed at the little red-eyed bat flying in the air as comfortably as a backstroke. Whatever it really wants to do, for now, it doesn't make any difference whether you stay here or not. Green agreed with Yilin's view. Yes, you are very self-aware as an outsider. I don't like weak female species very much. The 3 mother spirits were silent for a moment. They looked at each other and saw deep worry in their eyes. After spending so many years together, their relationship with Yilin is like that of family members. Worry is real worry. But since both Yilin and Bat said so, they had no choice but to sneak back into the spiritual residence through their respective small windows, eagerly peeking through a window to see what was going on here. Since there was nothing she could do to the other party, Yilin simply sat down on the oasis. The bat landed on a stone not far from Yilin. It was a rare opportunity. 13 years later, Yilin had the opportunity to talk to Green. When they said goodbye in a hurry in Gugu Town, Yilin was still full of doubts. After sorting out her thoughts for a while, Yilin started to ask questions to the teacher on the stone like an ignorant primary school student. What should I call you? I don't dare to tell you my real name. That's a taboo name that will make you wander into infinite nightmares whenever it sounds in your mind. If you call me Green, it will make you safer. Understood? Green, you said this is a dream, but that is only for you. So for me, what exactly is this place? Green rolled his wings and made a thoughtful gesture. After a moment, Green replied, you are the registrants of 11 Paradise. In your words, this should be the hub. Pivot. Green said with a smile, this is the central area for UZ1 registrants, the embodiment of ideology. So, I slept here for a while, but unexpectedly fell asleep. 13 years, for Green, is it just a nap? Green yawned, seemingly uninterested, and continued, your pivot still seems to be the default skin of Zyle Garden. Your spiritual sea is too small to be worth mentioning. This dream, don't eat it whatever. Default, skin. Why does this term sound weird? There is a subtext in Green's words that he despises the messy skins in online games with Krypton Gold. Being casually looked down upon by the boss, Yilin didn't feel anything at all. But Yilin noticed a detail in Green's words and immediately asked, spiritual sea? Yes, Green pointed at the small oasis lake with his wings, the bat's head moved up and down, and affirmed, spiritual sea. Dreamland, oh, I'm sorry, the scenery of the hub varies from person to person. But after your life permissions are decoded by Zyle Garden and reproduced in the form of source code, it is easier to interpret. Green looked sleepy, as if he hadn't woken up, and his tone was lazy and weak. It first pointed to the lake, this is your spirit. Then, it pointed to the fruitless coconut trees, this is your agility. Finally, it pointed to the boulder under its butt, this is your power. Yilin never expected that the various attributes on the Apostles panel would actually appear here in the form of landscape. So, isn't this pivot an alternative embodiment of the Apostles panel? No. Yilin quickly corrected her thoughts. To be more precise, the Apostle panel expresses the Apostles pivot with more intuitive data. Yilin looked calm, but inside, she still remained vigilant. It's hard to say whether this green appearing in his hub is a blessing or a curse. But currently Yilin has no other way to deal with it. She can only find a way to appease this big boss. Once again he felt deeply his own weakness. He felt like the little girl in Wangxiang Tower, being pushed away by the prostitutes without any resistance. What a miserable word. Yilin felt sad in her heart, but she could only ask honestly, so what about wool, luck, and charm? Oh, you said something else. Green rolled up his wings again and pointed at the young grass in the oasis, this is your will. After saying that, Green flew up to the top of the coconut branch and waved at Yilin. Wave. Yilin followed obediently and floated next to the bat. The bat pointed at a malnourished coconut spore that was only the size of a grape in the shadow, and said scornfully, this is your charm. What about lucky? Hey, Green floated down again, wandered around among several rocks for a long time, and finally found it. It shook its wings to signal Yilin to come over, and pointed at a small white flower that was wilting and about to wither between the rocks. Here, I almost didn't find it. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 848. Yilin still has many questions to ask. As she kept asking, Yilin became addicted. Inside the hub, the small coconuts and small white flowers are almost getting cold. But for Yilin, it's not a big problem. Isn't this a fact that has long been known? The bat didn't know whether he was tired, lazy, or just didn't like it anymore. After saying this, he fluttered his wings and flew to the tree to curl up. He grabbed the poor, stunted charming coconut with his paws and closed his eyes. Yilin was helpless. He thought that it would not be long before he entered the spiritual space, so he went back outside. At this point, Yilin finally unlocked a new way to play with her mental state, coming and going freely. Opening and closing his eyes, he returned to the wooden hut. Outside the house, birds were chirping crisply, and wisps of glare penetrated through the gaps in the wooden house, casting a mottled halo on Yilin's face. It's daybreak. I didn't expect that this would be the whole night. I spent a lot of time chatting with Green all night long. Everything Yilin wanted to do was delayed. But it doesn't matter. You can enter the hub at any time anyway, so you can just wait until the next night. So Yilin quickly got up from the simple bed, fetched water to wash up, and picked a few wild fruits native to Fangyuan Mountain to satisfy her hunger and thirst. When Yilin followed the road to the villa on the top of Fangyuan Mountain, the flower girl took her seat on time and began her daily lectures. What he taught today was the key points of the layout of each type of formation technique. The other 6 new inner disciples had been listening eagerly, eager for knowledge. Yilin quietly turned on following like a shadow and sat in the corner. While the flower girl was talking, she suddenly noticed that there was one more person. The smile on her face froze, but she soon regained her composure. When did this person come? An idea flashed through the flower boy's mind. Although Yilin is late, it can't be helped, and it doesn't mean that he doesn't want to learn. He carefully wrote down every word of the flower girl, digested it secretly, and confirmed it with his own knowledge one by one. He has a foundation in magic, crystal patterns, and supreme style magic. He learns it quickly and can even draw inferences from one instance. As for the formation technique, what Yilin finds most interesting is its layout method. Spiritual energy is the core energy supply in the formation, but the supply of spiritual energy comes from many sources. In addition to the most serious spiritual stones, magical weapons rich in spiritual energy, or other flowers, plants, and trees, can form a formation, which is very magical. To put it bluntly, this asymmetry also contains its rules, but these rules are more hazy and difficult to learn. After a class, it was sunset again. As a registered disciple, Yilin was not qualified to ask questions. When others came forward to ask, Yilin quietly left without having much interaction with the flower girl and others. Ren Qingshan stays in the house every day and doesn't go out. His villa is not easy to break into. Yilin often observes Biwen. Although he does not release his senses, he knows that Ren Qingshan is inside the house and rarely goes out. He couldn't rush in hastily, lest he might alert the enemy. Before nightfall, Yilin came to the shore of Fangyuan Mountain. This is the place to find cranes, which is equivalent to a dock or a bus stop. The cranes danced gracefully in the sky, with graceful posture and extraordinary agility. It's quite troublesome if you don't have the qualifications to be an outer disciple. Yilin watched on the pier for a long time, thinking about which crane to catch and ride today, when he happened to see one of the cranes. The dog was sneaking, its wings were shrinking, and it was flying away from the mountain little by little. You are the one. Yilin whistled, stretched out the invisible big finger technique from afar, and poked the crane's buttocks, scaring the crane into convulsions and almost crashing. When the crane came to Yilin swaying and crying, Yilin finally understood why the crane's movements were so obscene. It was really fate, this seemed to be the poor crane that Yilin had forcibly ridden. You don't want me to use force, right? Yilin squinted her eyes, smiled gently, and stroked the crane's feathers. Zion he hesitated for a moment and nodded in agreement. It seems quite simple to tame the monster. Yilin is familiar with driving a light car and takes off on a crane. This time, he came to Yanmo Mountain. On Ren Qingshan's side, after tasting the power of a fox and a tiger, Yilin was too lazy to talk nonsense and went straight up the mountain, but was stopped by a disciple of Yanmo Mountain. Bold, a mere registered disciple, Dare to trespass into Yanmo Mountain. The inner disciple guarding the gate was furious when he saw 2 registered disciple badges hanging on Yilin's waist. But while he was furious, he felt puzzled. 2 named disciple badges? How could it be 2 pieces? Hello, senior brother, I'm in a hurry and I'm reckless, so I hope you can forgive me. Yilin felt that there was no need to show off in front of ordinary disciples, so she made a gesture, cupped her hands, and said with a smile, preaching garden and Fangyuan Mountain together. The named disciple, Lin Yi, came to see the calligraphy and painting elder on the orders of the 2 elders. Yilin felt that her smile was quite kind, but for some reason the inner disciple guarding the door felt that the smile was full of provocation. He needed the magic formula with his hand and was about to use violence. He said in a cold voice, "Humph, where did the registered disciple come from? Didn't your elders teach you to abide by the sex rules? Elder calligraphy and painting, am I just a little named disciple of yours who meets you whenever you want? Where do you think I am, Yanmo Mountain?" When Yilin heard this, he was not angry, and looked calm. He took out the wordless token given by Qianbei and said loudly into the courtyard, "Qianbei's friend Lin Yi, please see the calligraphy and painting elder." You. The gatekeeper's face turned black when he saw that Yilin dared to make a loud noise during the calligraphy and painting elder's rest time. If he couldn't stop this guy, and if the calligraphy and painting elder started to argue, wouldn't it be his fault? He suddenly took out a thick brush from his waist and pointed it towards Yilin's chest. The tip of the brush was not stained with ink, but it already brought out a little bit of darkness. "Liangke, stop." A lazy voice came from inside the house. The door opened silently, and a graceful woman with 7-colored flowing light floated over. If you look closely, the 7-color flowing light under the woman's feet is said to be light, but in fact it is more like 7-color ink. As the woman steps, the 7-color ink under her feet changes posture, sometimes like flowers, sometimes like stars, and the special effects are very good. The woman's face was half covered with a mask. The pattern on the mask was a gorgeous dragon and phoenix embroidery. As the woman approached, the dragon and phoenix on the mask seemed to come alive. The eyes of the dragon and phoenix revealed bright eyes, as if they were the mask stared at Yilin. While the other party was looking at Yilin, Yilin was also looking at the calligraphy and painting elder. According to the information he received from Jian Nanshan in advance, an elder of calligraphy and painting, a master of painting, unknown name, female gender, age secret, unknown appearance, gentle personality, likes to sleep, lives at home all year round, and is indifferent to the world. He is one of the most Buddhist elders in the section, currently single and not married yet. Although it was not clear why Jian Nanshan knew so much about the calligraphy and painting elders, Yilin did not bother to ask more questions after the information was obtained. After Shi Huiyan asked the gatekeeper to step back, he seemed to look at Yilin's face for a moment, and then stretched out his hand towards Yilin. The skin of her fingers is very white, the fingers are slender, and the nails are shiny, giving people a fragile and tender feeling. This is a woman walking out of a painting. Yilin secretly evaluated the other party's temperament. Although Master Huiyan is wearing a dragon and phoenix embroidered mask on his face, his expression cannot be seen clearly. But there was no joy or sorrow in her soft voice, as if she had just woken up and was mumbling every word in her sleep. "Let me see, your token." "Good." Yilin handed the wordless order to Shi Huiyan. Master Huiyan held the wordless token in his hand and rubbed it with his fingers for a moment. This token was already familiar to Yilin. It was supposed to have words on it, but the side with the words was worn away, leaving only a rough scratch, nothing interesting to look at. "From today on, Lin Yi, you are the registered disciple of Calligraphy and Painting Mountain. Every evening, you can come here to listen. On the 13th of every month, my master will personally teach the Dharma. Don't forget it." Shi Huiyan handed the wordless token back to Yilin, and there was a slight smile in her voice. A numbered disciple's ID badge engraved on one side floated into Yulin's hand along with the wordless token. So far, Yulin had 3 badges on her waist that were named as disciples. The 3-sided waist tags on the belt collided together, making a muffled sound. Yulin started to have a headache. If he continues like this, his waist, no, his belt, I'm afraid it won't fit.